But the more important factor is you want as much deep sleep as you possibly can. And you can alter anything from your core body temperature, taking a warm shower at night, getting into a cold room. You can alter it by down-regulation breathing, not going and eating food maybe a couple hours before bed.
Yep.
There's a bunch of different ways on that.
Yeah. And I just had the luxury of listening to that Dr. Kyle Smith lecture, and he talked about how deep sleep is heavily associated, high amounts of deep sleep is heavily associated with better insulin sensitivity. And how that can actually then tie into. Welcome back, everyone, to the Functional Code. We are excited to bring you guys today another episode. We are talking about the most powerful ways to track and improve your recovery. With AI surging right now, there are so many companies out there that are making it very easy for you to track your own health data and to really make sure that you are keeping up on the ways that we can improve your health using objective data. And it's really fun because it now takes the guesswork out of making sure that you don't have to worry about whether you're making changes in your body or not. And there are a bunch of different ways you can measure and track this data. And so that's what Dr. Jace and I are going to talk about today. As always, I am Dr. Addie.
And I am Dr. Jace. Yeah, we're going to be going over heart rate variability, grip strength testing, CO2 tolerance, and different ways to test that, certain blood tests, blood markers, and then sleep tracking. So when we're looking at recovery, all these things are important for your whole body and system. So yeah, this can be a good one.
I'm excited.
Same here.
Yeah. We use, if not most, if not all, of everything we're about to talk about today too. Some of it we've been studying and wanting to use, but most we've used ourselves and we've used with patients.
Yes.
And I would say it's going to come to a point where we're going to want to start doing this with every single person that we come in contact with, because we just know the benefits far outweigh the burden of having to use it. And really, it's gotten to the point now where it's all done for you. You just wear it, and it does everything for you.
Yes.
So we were talking about too some of the apps that you used to had to put in your macros, and now you just take a picture and it does that for you. It's starting to get so easy for people. It should be, because it can be a lot of time to use those apps and those products. So if the easier it gets, the easier and more adaption, I think people are going to start using these things.
Absolutely. And once we get into some of this stuff, probably later on, we can talk about digital twinning, which I know we've talked on before, but what Dr. A was just saying there, that makes things even more of an importance in terms of how you can track your body, your system for the recovery rate, and certain things that are specific for your genetics and your makeup, which can be different from your spouse, your family members, which only helps optimize the personalization for each person.
100%. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting next 2 to 5 years, and I'm curious what AI is going to do to really fast track, not results for sure, but recommendations.
Yes.
How many times have you tried this diet, it didn't work for you, this diet, or this supplement? Trial and error is important as it's been. In this era, we're moving to an era of not having to worry so much about the trials, because the trials are being done digitally.
Yes.
And that's what Dr. Jace was talking about as far as twinning, is it puts a digital version of you into the interweb, internet, whatever we want to call it, and it runs thousands of simulations against your own DNA / metabolistic makeup.
Data from wearables and other tracking.
And it says, this is what you should be eating based off of what we have. This is what supplements you should be taking. This is how you should train. This is how you should, what kind of sleep pattern, everything. And you won't have to guess anymore. I just feel results are only going to increase. So I'm excited for that. I can't wait to have that available. Someone's going to hopefully do it right and just do it all and make it easy. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we know it's out. I know we had Micah in the past pod. He has a company that does very similar. We also know that we went to the Parker seminar, and Galpin, and was it just Galpin's company?
I think Galpin and Starrett are momentous, and then Garner probably works with Galpin on the side, but I think
with Vitality.
I think so.
Which I think that's what they're okay.
I'm sure if they're not small investors in each other's companies, or they just help each other on boards. I'm not sure how it works, but I would expect Garner to have probably chatted with Galpin about the company, or they've possibly worked on it together. But yes, we'll be talking about Vitality coming up here with Dan Garner's product, similar to Micah's product that we've looked at, both capable of using digital twinning, which we've talked about. There are just some different nuances with each. I've used Micah's product. I love it. I think it's incredibly helpful. It's already changed how I intake supplements.
Yeah.
I completely switched out my entire supplement drawer from what I gained from Micah's test. It was incredible. What had helped me is I saw that I wasn't wasting my money. I don't want to say I was wasting my money, but I allocated funds towards what actually moved my needle quicker.
Stated.
Yeah, and it helps me figure out, because I put a good amount of money towards supplements on certain times of the year, and so I want to make sure that money is being used appropriately. And I know everyone out there is going to think the same way. If they have some extra cash lying around, that's usually when supplements are added to the regimen.
Yes.
It's not usually a priority, unfortunately. Not saying we shouldn't. We don't want that for you, but most of the time, it's a privilege to own and to have those excess things for your health. Not everybody has that privilege, so I want it to be worth it for everybody who takes the time to invest in themselves like that.
Beautiful.
But yeah, so without further ado, let's jump right into heart rate variability. Now, heart rate variability, really, it's just the fluctuation of intervals between successive heartbeats. So we have high versus low. The higher means you have a better ability to have a parasympathetic state. Low means you have more sympathetic. And when we remember what parasympathetic and sympathetic means, is for parasympathetic, we are rest and digest, versus sympathetic, fight or flight. And so we want a high HRV, because that means we spend a lot more time in parasympathetic state. We're resting, recovering, digesting. You get the picture. Now, with HRV, it's used really commonly right now for more sports-related, maybe science, stress monitoring. Yes, you'll get cardiologists, cardiac health individuals who are using heart rate variability now, but
they go more specific.
It's not diagnostic for them. This can be a lot more functionally used, I would say, and again, linked a lot with more recovery status. But it has a great way of predicting certain things like all-cause mortality and other types of conditions involved with overtraining. And these are things that we can pick out with heart rate variability. But again, diagnostically, you have EKGs, stress tests, things that give more information, I would say, right at the time that needs to be clinically relevant. So, Doc, what are some ranges, or at least ways that we can let the listeners know on how heart rate variability is usually measured, and then what does that look like as far as where we want to be?
Yeah, so when you look at measuring these different types of heart rate variabilities, a lot of it will come through, and the easiest way is wearables. I know Whoop is one that I've been wearing for, probably almost 5 years now.
That's awesome.
So it tracks the strain, stress, and the recovery rates quite well. So I look at things a little differently than actually like the milliseconds between successive heart rates, which can be done in a number of different ways. But if you're going to go more of a specific route, then you might want to go see a cardiologist, but they're going to be looking, like you said, at other variables with the diagnostics. So when we're looking at an average of the heart rate variability, that's for most people on average of 42 milliseconds between successive heart rates. It can range anywhere from 19 to even upwards of 75. And like you said, the better you can control your state from in a stressful state into a calming state, the better you can withstand certain challenges, things that can come up throughout your everyday life. So even, and I've used this before with my pets, I've used this with some of the kids that I've watched, babysat before, in terms of having a lot of fun, ramping up their system, and really engaging a playful, high energetic state, and then go into a calming state as quickly as possible. So not only are they able to re-regulate themselves, but they're able to withstand if certain stressful things come into their day, situations that they're able to re-regulate themselves on a quicker basis too. And that can be done whether you want to use your eyesight, whether you want to use your breath, whether you want to change your body state and the place that it's in. And I know we're going to get into a couple tools here in a sec, but one of the best ways that you can, if you're in a stressful state, to calm the system down is open up the eyes, create a big gaze to where you're focusing on the whole area of the room, or if you get better yet, it would be standing on top of a mountain, staring out across the whole landscape, which calms the system down. The other way, longer exhale breathing as well.
Yeah.
So those are a few small things.
Which we've talked a lot about on our previous podcasts. And it sounds simple, but you'd be surprised at just how effective simple breath work can be for heart rate variability, for stress, for anxiety, all the other things we've talked about.
Yeah.
And I would recommend most start to look into that, because what you're going to find is it is going to start to improve a lot of the things that you might struggle with.
Yes.
People that get started usually fall asleep trying to do it because it puts you in a meditative state.
Yes.
And that's when I first started understanding the importance of it, because I was trying to meditate using breath work. I didn't really think of breath work as that important. I just thought, okay, I need to meditate. How do I start doing that? And then I found that it would help me fall asleep. And I was like, perfect, this is great. Little did I realize that it was breath work that was the very incredible, important part of that. And I was just learning when I first started jumping into this stuff. But yeah, I think, like you said, there's a lot of tools that we can use in both the short and the long term. So I took a lot of this information from Dr. Galpin and Dr. Huberman.
Oh, I love it.
And this is a mixture of both of their recommendations and what they both studied and learned. And so with short-term heart rate variability drops, I want to just preface how Dr. Galpin explains heart rate variability, because I think it's important for you guys to understand before we jump into this. So he explains heart rate variability like a bowling lane.
Yeah.
And he said that you actually want to touch the bumpers every now and again, okay? Because what that does is it allows you to put yourself into this state of stress, and then your body should be able to bring your bowling ball back into the middle of the lane. And that is important. That's heart rate variability. It's your ability to be engaged in a stressful state, but then to, like you said, very quickly come down and unwind.
Yes.
But he threw in a little bit a little bit extra kind of from what you were saying, is that if you never go and touch the bumpers, your lane gets smaller.
Yes.
And it's much easier for you to then get to that stressful state, and it's tougher for you to balance away from the bumpers because it's so close, and you're in this state. So he goes, the more you practice touching the bumper, coming back to center, the bigger your lane gets. And I love the way you explain that, because that's exactly what you just said. He goes, you can put yourself into that state, and then your ability to come down quicker is improved. And that coming down can be used with short-term settings and long-term settings. So he just pointed out that if you are measuring your heart rate variability and you're seeing a poor heart rate variability score, it's lower, 1 to 3 days of that, it's possibly just part of either training adaptation or stress. Monitor it, hold steady, you're doing fine. However, 4 to 6 days, you're possibly overreaching, you're not recovering how you should be. Evaluate your stress, your sleep, maybe your performance testing. And then lastly, anything over 7+ days, he states is already chronic stress.
Wow.
He states that more than likely you've been like this for a very long time, and you are overtraining, or you're not recovering, you're probably needing to eat better, sleep better. Some type of structure is missing.
Yes.
And that's, in a nutshell, how you can figure out what should you be doing short-term versus long-term. Now, 7+ days, we'll get right into long-term, because I think most people need this anyway. And that's, no matter what, sleep optimization is going to be what will directly link long-term heart rate variability improvement as a foundation.
Yes.
And so we can talk about all the things, sleep. We even had a podcast about that, actually, if you want to talk about it. But Whoop is helpful because it helps you figure out your deep and REM sleep, how you did that way. And I think the way that you explained it, you didn't really look at the milliseconds, because Whoop turns it into an algorithm using everything and gives you a score, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, for the most part. And I think they go off a bunch of data from top-end athletes from past data they've had ever since the company opened.
Yeah.
So they're really optimizing their scores. But as far as I can tell, they look at different stages of sleep. They look at the strain and stress on your body. They look at the heart rate variability going into sleep, out of sleep, throughout your day. And I'm assuming they have built in the certain stresses because you, like you said with that analogy, you push those bumpers. So the more you can stress the system, it might depend for each person on when you stress the system, because it doesn't make sense if you're going to work out late at night and then try to offload and try to sleep within an hour afterwards. It's coming down from a stressful state that quickly is really hard, and then obviously affects sleep. So there's
especially if you're going to consume food after and like all these other variables. That
100%.
But what's cool is Whoop can help you track that. You can have it ask you questions during the day, like, did you work out at night? Did you work out in the morning? Did you eat at night? All these things. Next thing you know, you have a month-long report saying you slept really well when you didn't work out at night, or you slept better, slept well when you didn't eat at night. And then next thing you know, you have all this data that can give you insights. And I remember seeing that data for the first time, and I'm like, whoa, caffeine kills my sleep. Who would have knew?
Yeah, and they break it down from weekly to monthly to even yearly too, and I absolutely love it. It's not a paid promotion by any means, but we like talking about stuff that actually works and that we like to use for the most part.
Not to say it would be awesome to have a paid promotion.
Hit us up.
We're out there. But anyway, so longer term interventions to help with heart rate variability, journaling, meditation. Again, we talked about breath work with that. Social connection actually shows long-term improvements in psychological well-being and heart rate variability. Hydration and electrolytes is actually helpful for long-term heart rate variability.
I love that.
Yeah.
Such a smart idea.
Omega-3 fatty acids, believe it or not, can be helpful for that. And then reducing training load if you are overloaded can be helpful. Now, short-term, this is just ways that we can try to improve performance and improve sleep, just the minor changes that we can do day to day. Cold exposure can be incredibly helpful to improve heart rate variability. Now, what it is interesting is it actually does exactly what we talked about. It hits you to your bumper lane, but then it has an incredible ability to rebound you back towards center. So doing this short term but consistently is a great way to help you get yourself to the bumper, and then you can practice yourself bringing it back online. That's a great one. Heat therapy is apparently the same thing, similar like sauna. And I wouldn't say it's as stressful as maybe as a cold therapy. Doc, do you agree?
It probably doesn't reach that side bumper as strongly as it does the cold therapy.
Okay. I agree with you, from what I've felt too.
Yeah, because you can push the parameters if you're uncomfortable, especially if you're not used to sauna or heat therapy.
It might take 30, 40 minutes in that sauna to get you, depending on your health.
Yes.
Cold, you can get there in 30 seconds, if that.
A couple minutes,
Yeah.
100%.
Music, 10 to 30 minutes of music. Your favorite music can elevate heart rate variability through relaxation pathways. Lastly, breath work. Breath work, I would say, could be short and long term, obviously, too. But in the short term, we talk about how just a double inhale, exhale can be so helpful for improving vagal tone, decreasing pulse, and lowering your heart rate.
Yep.
Yeah. Lastly, I had recommended 3 ways you can start measuring your heart rate variability. Not only that, these other products can measure much more than that too. But Whoop is number 1. That would say that's, from what I've been looking at, definitely the more comprehensive tracker. The next is the Oura Ring, which
I always want to try that.
There's actually, I looked into it, there's no real-time HRV. It's segmented in how it measures it. Whoop is 24/7.
Which makes sense.
Yep. So it's limited in-day tracking, but from what I've seen, Oura Ring actually can have much higher sleep phase tracking or appropriate sleep phase tracking versus Whoop, and I don't know why. I'm still looking into all of that. Okay. And then lastly, the Apple Watch is very convenient because most people already have it. And then again, you can integrate it with certain apps and things like that, and very helpful for heart rate variability and sleep. But I know that Apple's already looking to add in more things to their watch. And I don't know if you know this, Doc, but they're actually looking to add a non-needle glucose monitor.
So smart.
It's like,
I wonder, without getting to the blood.
Yeah, I don't know. Exactly. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know if it's going to be like a Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious how they're going to do it. But they think
it doesn't make sense.
But they think they
right
have
here.
it. They think they can do it.
Interesting.
So you'd be killing Dexcom and like all these other wearable like you'd murder them right out. Like
100%.
they would, it'd be done. And now if they could implement what Whoop is doing and Oura Ring along with this this would be the iPhone killing all the companies again.
Yep.
It's crazy.
And you look at the wearable glasses and stuff that they're going with potentially VR down the road.
It's a little scary.
It's a little bit of a monopoly on that
But yeah,
side.
those three are awesome. We've used almost all of those. I'm possibly about to buy an Oura Ring because I'm just curious. I wanted to try one for a while now, and
exciting.
But the more I read about it, Whoop is still one that looks. Maybe I'll get both. I don't know. We'll see. So, next is grip strength, and this one is a lot easier to measure. You can buy a dynamometer for $20 off of Amazon, and so grip strength is exactly what it is. It's how much strength defined by pounds per square inch, and most humans, adults, it's based off of gender. Think for women, it's anywhere between 30 to 60 pounds. Do we have?
Or kilograms.
Kilograms. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So less than 16 kilograms is women, less than 26 kilograms is men. That's defined as a weaker grip.
So if I squeeze it right now, I'm at 45 kilograms.
45, yes. You're double the norm of what would be considered weak, which is great. Now, ways you can measure this is track weekly, month, and you're going to start to see once you start working out, maybe taking care of yourself, we would want that to improve. We would want that grip strength to improve. Now, I actually took 5 incredibly large studies that showed how hand strength predicts all of these things in life, including all-cause mortality, longevity, everything that I could go for, why you would want to think of using hand grip strength if you're going to look for longevity and health and well-being over time. Now, the first was 10,000 people in this study, 10-year study. It showed that low grip strength had a significantly higher risk of both all-cause and premature mortality, meaning you have a higher prediction of dying earlier or dying much earlier due to a certain disease. And this just showed, again, what a simple measurement can predict. Now, it's not specific for certain diseases. It's not specific to actually show you how or why you might die, but it does predict your quality of life more than like into aging years and possibly dying earlier in aging years because of less independence. You're not able to move as much. You're probably weaker, and that's a good predictor of that.
Yeah. And then it even makes sense because when I actually did a trial of grip strength on every single day for 2 weeks straight with workouts, and I can tell differences based on, it's almost like a recovery rate. If you notice like your baseline on an average of a week, 7 days straight of your grip strength, both hands, because each one can be a little different. You can start seeing if you're below that average that you want to probably calm and don't do too much workout-wise stress throughout your day. But I look at it as it's an ability to generate intensity throughout the nervous system. So the more you can generate through your grip strength, whether it's full body, upper body, arms, it just gives you a good understanding of more or less how you can control and then funnel that intensity with your stress through your everyday life.
I love that.
So it makes sense going back to the study of all-cause mortality. If someone doesn't have the ability to ramp up the nervous system, could you imagine where that funneling of the nervous system intensity is going to be diminished throughout the body? In addition to other stuff that's going on with each person.
And that's a good point because not only that, the next study that I have, low hand grip strength was consistently associated with increased mortality but decline in cognitive function.
There we are.
Reduced mobility and function decline. So just like Doc said, we're also seeing a correlation nervous system-wise. Low cognitive function, reduced mobility, and functional decline. No, I love that you brought that up. The next few, we found that low grip strength had a 1.89-fold higher risk of all-cause mortality. The next one, low hand grip strength correlated with an increased mortality across all age groups, especially in men. Highlight sex differences possibly with this one study. And lastly, men with higher midlife hand grip strength were significantly more likely to live to 100. This was a study done on Finnish men born between 1919 and 1934. This is a longitudinal cohort study. Again, if you had a higher grip strength, later on in life, huge correlation to you living to 100, which blows my mind.
You know how people say you want to make sure you build up your quad strength? I'm sure it's going to be similar with grip strength as well.
It has to be.
And dexterity.
Dexterity and just like you said, the feedback nervous system wise when we're using our hands and when we're lifting heavy things and there's so much nervous system involvement to dexterity and those kinds of things too. So and maybe blood flow and all the other things that tie into it. So yeah, I'd be curious to see if there's any other types of more specific research that we can get to why grip strength is tied to these things. But so far, it makes a pretty easy argument to why a $20 grip strength tester should be added to your regimen of ways to track how performance is. I like that you added in the recovery part of it to know how to use the numbers and how to track that over time. Maybe add it to your Whoop.
100%.
Just be like, what was your grip strength today? Just type it in. That could be another great way to, there's a bunch of ways to do that.
And let's say you don't have a dynamometer. Go to a playground, hang on a pull a bar as long as you can each day for 7 days, and then average the time and try to go more or less than that. There's going to be some like hypertrophy in terms of the strength gains from just your wrists, your hands, just due to that time frame, but it gives you a good understanding. If you don't want to spend money on a dynamometer, that would be another way to go about it too. But
there you go. I love that. So next, Doc, this is one that I'm still learning more about, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and that's the carbon dioxide tolerance test. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and how that affects the body?
Beautiful. And some of this I'll take from Dr. Andy Gelbin, who we saw at the Parker seminar. We'll go through something small with that because I like how he explained a few things there. But pretty much CO2 or carbon dioxide and how it's excreted through the breath, that will determine a bunch of different factors, quite frankly. So it's pretty much the ability to manage and monitor carbon dioxide levels, which helps not only for performance and anxiety management. So more or less, let's start thinking about if you're going to breathe in and then expel out, you're going to be probably going through a high amount of exercise or stressful situations. Like naturally our body, when we're in a stressful situation, will automatically do a sigh reflex. Even same with like dogs and pets when they're about to fall asleep. So as they're expelling the CO2, that either one puts them into a calm state if it prolongs or decreases their heart rate, but if they're trying to work out excessively, that we're going to be expelling a bunch of CO2 into the atmosphere. So how you can monitor that is a couple different ways, and some of this is to test the nervous system, and we use this in clinic quite often because I think it's important for a bunch of patients to have these tools. So you first start off, if you want to test this yourself, you start off by inhaling, exhaling. We do this 4 times. In, out, and then we end with in. And then just if you were to blow through a straw, you want to start a timer, and then you slowly start blowing out as long as you possibly can. Now the goal is to get anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. Nice. If there's anything less than 30 seconds, it's either you're having poor recovery, it's affecting your sleep, or if let's say you just did an exercise workout, that would be another thing in terms of you have to just increase the recovery rate on that side. But if you're able to exhale out longer than a minute, you're doing pretty darn good recovery-wise, and in terms of how you're able to regulate the breath, that is well monitored as well. There's different steps and ways that you can go about that in terms of double inhale, exhale breathing if you're stressed, or let's say you're consistently breathing out 1 minute long exhales. You either want to ramp up the nervous system, whether it's a workout, whether it's challenging yourself in something new, like a new activity, pushing yourself in terms of going to meet someone or doing something you just feel is uncomfortable. That'll move the parameters. If we go back to the same thing in terms of the bowling alley, in terms of the bumpers on the side, and get to the stressful state, it's on that same pathway. You want to push those barriers so you're pushing yourself, because the more you don't push yourself, it then gets narrower and narrower. thus less recovery as well. So
Yes.
it works very similarly to that. But yeah, no, that's one of the ways that you can go about it. There's also capnography, which also measures the end-tidal CO2 levels, which can be done in a clinic setting. And there's a couple other ways that you can go about it too, but those would be a few of the reason whys that you want to start monitoring your CO2 levels. But Dr. Andy Gelbin, he brought up, I love this point, in terms of sleeping in a room that's closed off with no ventilation.
I just wanted you to touch on that for sure.
I love that. So he had us go into, you hold your breath as long as you possibly can, and then try to think about yourself if you are in, because that builds up the CO2 levels within your body. If you're in a closed room, if you have poor sleeping conditions, imagine trying to sleep in a room like that.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, with measuring things, and we'll get to this company in a little bit of how he measures it, but I didn't realize that it could play such an effect to how we sleep, our ability to be living in a higher CO2 involved room. And just like you talked about how we breathe, expels CO2. It gets to a point though, that CO2 is going to accumulate in the room too. So yes, it's out of you. We expelled it, which is great.
Yes.
But if there's no airflow and for some reason it's 900 parts per million is the measurement that he explained. And if that room gets higher than 900 parts per million, it's directly correlated to poorer sleep quality.
Wow.
And that's something that I think most people should think about and get to a point of, if you've tried XYZ, these are the things that we've talked about on our sleep podcast: colder room, darker room, try to wind down before bed, and all the things, and we're still not getting the change. This is something I would recommend to look into as well. It's airflow and CO2, and these are just things I didn't even think about.
I would not have thought about it.
But yeah, we're going to talk about how to measure that in a little bit here. And one of the companies that Dr. Galpin uses to, and not only to test that, but to test a sleep study itself. You can have one right in your home. But yeah, no, that was a fun segment that he provided. And I'm definitely interested in measuring that myself. Next, we have blood biomarkers. Now, we can go all day on blood. There's so many different tests you can probably think about as far as measuring your health. And for the sake of the podcast, we really just stuck to the top recovery-linked biomarkers.
Yes.
And so creatine kinase, CRP, cortisol, and testosterone, those are usually the first four that people would measure to help understand stress on the body. And also we can correlate that to either recovery and or helping if there's overtraining involved. So these are used a lot in the companies that I'm about to bring up when they do health tracking for you that is recovery focused with their blood tests and their AI protocols to help figure out which nutrition, how to train, all these other things. It's really important to have these in regards not only to recovery, but to a lot of other markers in life. Testosterone by itself, that's one that's going to help anabolism, building muscle, recovering, all these other things, versus cortisol, which is more of catabolic. It's incredibly important to have in your body, but at a surplus for a long period of time, there's going to be more negative effects.
Sure.
People tie a lot more negative, I would say, connotations to cortisol, but people forget just how important cortisol is. And yes, in the long term, cortisol can be detrimental to the body, but for other processes, it's incredibly important to make sure that you have a good cortisol regulatory cycle. We'll call it CHP axis. Really, the only two companies that came up for me that I wanted individuals to know about was Inside Tracker and Vitality. So Inside Tracker, and these, again, there's so many more companies out there that take your blood and do amazing things with it. True Diagnostic is a company that I've used in the past. They've got some great longevity biomarkers. Micah's company, Theriome, they do a phenomenal job. But just for the sake of the podcast, this is just for recovery alone. Inside Tracker, they have algorithms that take your blood, but also they integrate their software with your wearables. And then again, they deliver a bunch of recommendations based off of the data that they received and the blood markers. They have a bunch of blood markers that they use, but in them include cortisol, CRP, CK, vitamin D, testosterone, everything we just talked about. And then again, they deliver science-backed recommendations of food, supplements, lifestyle, and then of course they track over time using your data to make those changes if you need. Are you recovering not as well, and should you change your diet, your intake, your macros, all these other things? And that is a company that was helped created by Dr. David Sinclair, who is a really big longevity expert. And I think there's some other individuals involved in Inside Tracker. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know Huberman promotes it quite often.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked into it myself, and it seemed awesome in terms of what they're able to provide for the metrics and the analysis of each person, especially when they can integrate different wearables into the equation. I think that only adds another level to what you get out of the results.
100%.
Which makes sense.
And that's, to me, this is healthcare 3.0 right here.
Yes.
This is going to be what it will take to get to the next level when it comes to being a better provider, to get better results as a patient, and to eliminate the BS, because we'll have the data finally.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with, we think you're getting better because we've noticed this. Show me. Galpin talks about that. He talks about how, can you actually prove it? And now we have that ability to do. Vitality is the other company that definitely focuses on high performance optimization using blood work. Dan Garner, we're very excited. We're hoping to get him on the pod here in about half a year or so. Yeah.
A few months.
He's ramping up his social media presence, and I think that was when he's ready to start getting more on podcasts. Excited to have him on. He'll talk probably all about this, but he uses hundreds of biomarkers for performance-specific ranges. He covers everything from energy, sleep, stress, hormones, cardiovascular health. There's 13 functional categories that they use your blood to measure and test for. And then he has what he calls performance zones, which it's different than your generic lab zones where, let's say, for example, you want your, what's one, maybe testosterone, we'll call it. Some average levels, they have it even down to 400 for men. Is that optimal? We would argue no. So optimally, and for performance, he would argue that, let's say, we'd want you between maybe to 600 to 1,000.
Yes.
So you have your average range when it comes to certain blood markers. However, that's based off of the data of average humans,
which probably poor health.
We understand what average health is like here in the United States, and we would argue that we don't want to be pooled into the average.
Correct.
We don't want to continue to be using our data and be compared to what average is, and Galpin talked about that too. It's getting to the point now where you need to start measuring yourself against yourself, not against the average, because unfortunately the average is only getting worse, and it's not accurate anymore.
It's even changing guidelines throughout all the parameters.
Yep.
The whole government, all the governments that monitor it, FDA, all this stuff.
And I hope they do. I hope it starts to become more accurate, more truthful. But that's going to
make sense why digital twinning is going to be a huge step moving forward.
Because it just takes that out of it.
Yes.
He provides customized programming for nutrition, training, recovery, supplements. There's quarterly testing that you can do, and then of course progress tracking. And then also he has 300 plus educational articles on health and human performance. I read a few of them, and they're very well done, very insightful, and so plenty of resources for you to get started. Good job, Dan.
Yeah, I love Dan. Shout out to Dan Gardner. Yeah, when I got a chance to meet him at the Parker seminar, super awesome individual, but I am very excited to try this Vitality. It is definitely more on the spendier level. I think blood work every 6 months is a couple $1,000s, but it comes with an analysis, which if you're going to get blood work done, you want to know who can read that and can put all the pieces together. And that's where, if you build that into a system, there you have Vitality, there you have Inside Tracker, there you have all these top companies that can create that analysis for you and spit out what are the things that are needed or things that you can take away from the levels on that side. But yeah, it was interesting to see. He even had workouts to a certain extent planned within there, not necessarily saying you should do this exercise for this amount of reps for this long, but gives you a good parameter of certain tissues to work on.
Nice.
And other certain specifics based on workout, food recommendations, supplements, all that stuff. So
as much
full scope
information as possible. There's still a little bit of art to the science right now. So I'm sure they can't get everything specific, but as much as they can give you is going to help in the long term, for sure. Lastly, we saved the best for last, sleep tracking. Now, sleep tracking has changed a lot in the last 5 years. And when Galpin explained the Absolute Rest company, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or you can do literally an FDA-approved sleep tracking device in your home by yourself. The second you mentioned that, I'm like, yep, things have already changed.
Yeah,
now,
that's the one.
Now we're there, and you can do it every night. That's what's exciting for me. And I think this is the one, if I were to spend money on in the beginning, it would be on sleep.
Yeah.
Doc, would you agree?
Hands down.
Yeah.
Like, with recovery, it comes hand in hand with sleep. Sleep quality, how you can pretty much diminish from a stressful state, it all comes back to that.
Yes. And so for me, if we are going to make a difference in not only a patient's life, but if you're listening in your life, if you are trying to improve recovery, if you are trying to get better results in the gym, if you're just trying to feel better from a busy lifestyle, stressful lifestyle, this is going to be your foundation. This is going to be number one. Sleep tracking can be done in many different ways. Again, you can use wearables. There are now the devices that you can also have by your bed, picks up certain things, but the most common right now are your wearables. They are effective because, and even the way Galpin explained it, he goes, even if they're 90% effective, that's still way, way more important than just guessing.
Yes.
And he even explained that with the macro calorie counter. He goes, if you look at all the research, and they have showed this time and time again, if you are just guessing what your calories are versus what you actually are doing, everyone is so way off. And so even if you are 90% effective at counting calories with an app, you're already way farther ahead than just guessing what calories 100%. You're eating during the day. So it's the same thing with this. It is still, I know I looked at a study that showed the difference between Oura. One guy, he did this study, he wore an Oura ring, a Whoop band, and a Garmin. And he tried to see the differences in the heart rate variability testing and the sleep, all that stuff. And there was discrepancies, unfortunately.
Interesting.
But time and time again, there were still plenty of patterns that you could pick up that were very similar. But one day, one of it was a little bit lower than higher than the other. So yeah, but to you, that's what's going to matter. And so
you versus you.
It's you versus you. It has nothing to do with the average. You can then take your data and see what you're doing over time and not having to worry about it being 100% accurate, because it's always just going to be for you.
Well stated.
Doc, do you want to just touch a little bit on how we can measure efficiency, why that matters when we want to talk about REM sleep versus deep sleep versus waking up and what that looks like? Just a little bit for those who maybe have never really understood or have looked into why these are important in sleep tracking.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you want to see how well you can move through like certain stages of sleep. And there's, like Doc said, there's a bunch of wearables that can go into it. At the end of the day, you want as much REM sleep as you possibly can, because that's where the healing comes in. That's where the down regulation of your body comes in. It's also short for rapid eye movement. It's also where your nervous system on a parasympathetic state is ramped up and it's at its highest level. It can repair the whole system as your body physically is not engaged. Mentally, you're going to be in a restful state. So how well can you move through those stages? And I know we did a podcast on sleep, so if you guys want more information, by all means, go back to that one. But the gist of it is, as you're getting into sleep, you're starting to get into this stage one to where it's a restful, if you would think about the first few minutes, 10, 15 minutes of trying to fall asleep, you're in like a relaxed state. It's also, if you get into what's known as yoga nidra or longer exhale meditative breathing, you can get into that state, and that actually has a deep or increased amount of recovery state for if you're going to upload any information, memory recall. It's awesome to get into that state. If you want to down regulate after a hard workout, you want to get into a deep relaxative state so you can monitor that heart rate variability, so tying in that. So the deeper you get, the more sleep you have, which is why you want anywhere from, for most people, 7 to 8, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, so you can get into that later stages. But naturally, what wakes you up from sleep is either the core body temperature, which starts to increase as the morning comes, which kind of almost takes you out of this sleep state to get you into a normal wake state from there. In terms of how everything is being tracked from sleep wearables, for some, they can get into the deeper stages of REM, stages 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on what device you have. But the more important factor is you want to have, like I said, as much deep sleep as you possibly can. And you can alter anything from your core body temperature, taking a warm shower at night, getting into a cold room. You can alter it by down regulation breathing, not going and eating food a couple hours before bed. There's a bunch of different ways on that. But, yeah.
And I just had the luxury of listening to that Dr. Kyle Smith lecture, and he talked about how deep sleep is heavily associated, high amounts of deep sleep is heavily associated with better insulin sensitivity. And how that can actually then tie into when you have good insulin sensitivity, you'll have a greater chance of not putting on as much weight, you're even losing weight. So your ability to lose weight improves. And so this guy worked on improving his patients' insulin scores, his fasting insulin scores, using sleep as a foundation, again, improving deep REM sleep. And what he found was that alone, along with improving exercise, diet, and supplementation, but he's found that can incredibly improve patients' ability to lose weight if they're tracking their sleep and making sure that their deep and REM sleep are improved. And again, when it comes to recovery, yes, it's super important, but people don't understand just how much sleep is important in day-to-day life for everyone. But I'm telling you, if you want to lose weight, you need to be sleeping better. It is a very quick way to hack how much you're going to be losing.
Yeah, when he brought that up and you told us,
I love it.
My mind was blown.
It's still one of my favorite lectures I've ever been a part of. It was phenomenal. And it's already changed. I have now ordered 2 fasting insulin tests on patients. I am that convinced that we need to start hacking that today. It is very important.
Man. Yeah. And the fact that you were like, I've been to this speaker before, like when we were at the Parker seminar, but this one sounds interesting. The fact that you just went to that one and it's changed everything.
And now I'm so glad I did.
Yes. Yeah. Glad you did too.
Super fun. Super fun.
Yes.
We have the gold standard, they call it, way to measure sleep, which is called an EEG. This is a sleep study now. The other one is called actigraphy, which is the wearables that you wear. Now, again, it's not a full-on EEG, but it still does a great job of tracking patterns for you. And like we've talked about, that's important. It doesn't give you a full EEG done sleep study every night. But what's cool is more companies are now coming out. Absolute Rest is one of them. We've been talking about this for now, that gives you this at-home polysomnograph sleep study in the comfort of your own home. And this company also does a lot more than just that. They do blood marker bioanalysis. They do environmental analysis. That's what we were talking about when it comes to CO2. There is a psychological evaluation that they do along with the comprehensive assessment. They look at genetics, they look at diet, exercise, lifestyle, and they even look at the microbiome. This team of scientists and clinicians that work at Absolute Rest, they are freaking rigorous, man. This is exciting. I'm so excited to try this. I've been looking into it more and more, but based on what I'm finding is they create a customized sleep plan that's tailored to your needs and your lifestyle based off of everything that they're looking at.
Your environment, everything.
And they give you ideas on how to improve it, and then to continue to track and monitor it. I'm not sure if they give you other recommendations. I'm still looking into that, but I do know that they have this FDA-approved sleep lens system that you wear that will provide this continuous tracking of your data when you're sleeping, which then again gives you just an edge to that data versus just the wearable. So I'm not sure how the FDA sleep sends. My guess is it does some type of retinal tracking while you're sleeping, is my guess. And then again, they do ongoing support and coaching throughout the whole process, again, to track your progress, refine your sleep plan. And again, I don't know if they do any nutrition or any other types of recommendations. I gotta look into it, but it is something that I'm looking into because I think this would be so incredibly helpful to start doing these comprehensive assessments with our patients without having to worry about sending them to sleep studies and having them sleep in a lab, which unfortunately not everyone is comfortable doing that. And then you have to do it at home. And I've talked to patients who've said, Yeah, it's a 2-night sleep study at my house. The first night they told me that the data wasn't good, so then they're just hoping that the second night is good. And there's no connection and uniformity.
Yeah, it's not a true norm, it seems.
So if you get the comfort of saying, you know what, we get to track your data for 30 days with this software, and we don't have to worry about getting good data on the first night versus the second night because we know how much sleep studies cost. Like, that just takes it all out of it.
100%.
And I'm excited to then use this technology to help patients the way it should be. So
yeah, when I looked into it on the website, you have to apply and they'll reach out to you. It's not something that you can just buy right from the website, which I thought was smart to a certain extent. It doesn't help for mass adoption, but
I'm sure they're enrolling patients in studies to begin with, and
they are.
They're making sure that you qualify, and they're doing it the right way.
Yep.
But when we can start to adopt this more widespread use, that's where this gets fun.
Oh, it's so exciting.
So, and Galpin is going to do it the right way.
Yep.
And that's what's going to make it more effective and long term. And yeah, super excited. If not, Whoop Band is still just as helpful to get started,
sure.
or a Ring. Again, Apple Watch, you can do that. Garmin's, I know, and there's so many out there now that you're more than likely able to do it a lot easier than you think.
Yes.
So I think a 2-year Whoop membership is like a couple $100
or so.
Yeah.
It's nothing terribly crazy.
You think about that 24 months, you divide that out between $200, that's what, 10-ish, over 12-ish bucks a month?
100%.
Yeah.
You can add different bands, be a little more stylish.
Yeah. Which that's what stopped me from getting it, because I was looking out I'm like, dang, what bands do I want? I gotta style this now.
Yes.
But all right, Doctor, anything else for today?
No, that was good. I think we hit all the topics quite well for different areas on how you can look to increase your recovery throughout your system. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them below. We'll reach out to you on that, or we'll do a whole another vid on whatever it is.
Yeah, let us know if you've tried these trackers before, which one's your favorites. Let us know if you've heard about any of these other companies and maybe ones that you've used. We're only growing exponentially quicker with these AI companies. So there might be some out there that we don't know about. We'd love to hear more from you guys. We're just excited to learn more and continually provide value to you guys. So let us know. Until next time, guys, have yourself a great day.
Disclaimer, the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Thanks for joining us on The Functional Code. For more evidence-based health insights, subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the functional code. Until next time, stay well, stay informed, and embrace the science of living well.